Hello, 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 good evening, and welcome to another, just a painting stream, just hanging out, and that camera just absolutely goes crazy every single time. Yeah, we're just going to do some painting. I have a variety of stuff at hand. Most of it is Konflikt 47. I've got the Axis stuff that I've had here for several months now. I've also got some Brit automatons. I have some turtles, although they're not primed, so I can't paint them just yet. I have a Cossack walker. Doesn't need actually much left on this one. It's a little bit of highlighting, a little bit of kind of colour separation, and then snow for the base, and that'll be done. And then, as we saw in the thumbnail, for everyone who I assume you've seen the thumbnail at some point, I have a whole bunch, a whole heap, as it were, of Americans. These are mostly the fireflies, and mostly the plastic fireflies. I have the resin ones, and I have Roberta Wells. I actually have two of Roberta Wells in here. There we go, there's the other one. I've also got a linebacker, and in blue, that is the linebacker's pilot. So he's going to end up standing on the side there. Reading a map. It's probably lost, who knows. But the first thing I want to start with, the first thing I need to paint is this, which you may think is done, and in fact I made a video on it. In fact, rather a successful video about it. It's got I think 900 views by this point. I'm actually going to just double check that. Or it might be 850. 820 at the moment. 863 if I look at the back end. So quite a few views on the Humber armored car. Much more than I usually get for certain. But I'm going to bring out Ken Walker's comment on that video, saying that this protruding thing that comes out of the side of the turret, which I rather jokingly referred to as a teacup holder, it's actually a compass, because having a compass on the inside of an armoured box kind of messes with it, so they put the compass on the outside, so the tank commander, armoured car commander, vehicle commander can pop his head out when he's reading the map and looking up stuff, trying to work out where the rest of his command is gone. He's got the compass right there. And so first thing I want to do is just put a tiny spot of a brass paint just on that to emphasize that it is in fact a compass. And naturally that starts by painting it brown. So let me just choose an appropriate brush. For anyone who did see the thumbnail of the video, I am having fun with appropriate brushes today. Oh, I knocked something over and I've no idea where it's gone. Never mind. Oh, it doesn't need to be an amazing brush. It can probably be that one. Yeah, I need a bit more water in the wet palette. There we go. Good. I'm probably actually going to be using some brown on the fireflies, which is mostly what I'm going to be painting today, so I may as well, if I my paint is being problematic. There we go. I mean, I'll need more later, but that's fine. So, right there on the side there, I just put for any kind of gold or brass or anything like that, I usually put a bit of brown underneath it because that gives a nice tonal underlayer, but it also means that if you miss any bits in the recesses, brown actually works as a really nice shadow color for those. Yeah, just a simple way of doing something like that. Well, let's see about this. I'm not convinced about this one. I think this is a bit too red. Yeah, maybe. Where's mine? If I put that on, so this is a rose gold. So if I use a rose gold and then I use a normal gold just as a highlight, it'll average the tone between the two. So this more red and the more very stark yellow of the gold. And hopefully that'll give me kind of the impression I was looking for. Because if I was to just use that by itself, that would just look garish. I do like this one. The Pro Acryl Metallics, generally relatively good. So let's see. Where is my focus? About there. Not bad. Just a nice little touch to recognise what that actually is. Interesting to see a compass. Every now and again I learn something. So let's move on to the fireflies then. Fireflies will be the main focus of today. I do still need a tank commander for this one. Tank commander. Vehicle commander. Because I put the hatches open on both turrets. Usually I would leave one open and one closed. Just for the variety. But this time I actually left it open on both. And I only found one tank commander in my collection. I do have... I think it was from Sherman, actually. Yeah, it probably came off a Sherman kit. But the I found another vehicle crew that I think was from the M10. The British and Americans both have crews in that kit, and I used some of the Americans in the in my Greyhound. But that means that the ones that left over should be the British, I think. But they're artillery crew and they're not wearing berets, so do they fit? I think not. I've just noticed there's this guy in the corner here. Bazooka. Unprimed. We will not get him today. Excuse me. So I think the first step on the fireflies it might be to pick out the harness and webbing, because that's going to be tan, sand color. Boots will probably be a dark brown. Weapon will be dark brown for the wood, dark brown and gold for the metalwork. Shall I do the entire receiver in gold, or shall I make that a normal steel sill? We'll check on that. I'm wondering about the gas mask. So for all of my fireflies, they've all got their face covered. So most of them have the helmet with the normal gas mask. I've got flamethrower teams with the flight cap looking thing and gas mask. I think there are a couple of the special characters with bare faces. Yeah, this guy doesn't have a mask on. But all of the others, oh, and Roberta Wells, but all of the normal ones have their masks on. And I suspect that I'm probably also going to paint their gloves. I'm going to paint their hands as gloves. I can't really see any glove-like detail on the hands, so I think they are not wearing gloves. Where was the officer? Yeah, even he's not really got kind of any glove texture on his hand. There is a layer line though. I like that one. It's one of my favourite ones. Right, let's see. Shall I go with the lighter tan, which is an old paint and falling to bits and probably won't work very well, or the ochre, which is in even worse condition? I know there's at least a little dribble of something useful at the bottom of this, but yeah. That's not supposed to separate out of your paint. It's just not. Well, I've got something. Oh dear. Yeah. This paint is very rapidly approaching. I think it's beyond its end of life. I was about to say it's approaching its end of life. No, it's done. It's done. Let's see if I can coax it into some semblance of actual use. So this is all of the harness and webbing is going to be in this ochre. It will not all be in this ochre because this ochre is not having a good time. It's not covering great, but it's also not being lumpy like I was worried about. So we might actually get it. Might actually get it in 2 coats. We shall see. There's loads and loads of straps for this harness. Right, there's one around the thigh. Is that, or is that just a wrinkle in the clothes? I can't even tell. Too much detail. Question is, do I go for every single strap in this colour? Because some of the straps can just be green. That's allowed. And I do have 20 models to go through. Tell you what, there is one thing I really should be doing. I made this thing for a reason. And that reason is painting models, and that's what I'm doing, so I should use it. And that probably also means that you'll see the model a little bit better if I can stay in that focus range. That focal bubble. Yeah, about that. I feel kind of disappointed painting these in such a normal paint scheme after painting my Japanese bright blue. There are, of course, more Japanese models coming. So there's that. It'd be nice if there was any paint in this paint. Oh, and the other shoulder strap. So I've got to do that process 20 something times. But that's okay, we've got plenty of stream to go. That's one. And now the same again. Should I do the boots in tan or the boots in brown? I think boots in brown is more going to suit it. It's going to give that balance of tones over the model, especially as it's at the kind of far end of the model where the feet are all the way at the bottom. Look at me pretending to be an artist.
It'll balance out the colour tones.
Terrain by Aaron says boots in brown. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Where's... There it is. Trying to work out which wrinkle is the strap and which wrinkle is the trousers. Yeah, welcome to the stream, Aaron. Hopefully you're painting something interesting as well. The ideal, which will not be met today, but the goal to be had is to paint all of the base coats of the fireflies and get them so that I can do the wash off stream, and then in the next stream do all the highlight work. I doubt I'll get that far. All the base coats on these models. Uploading another Konflikt 47 kit bash. Nice. I think I've seen one of yours before, although I can't necessarily remember. I'm trying to remember what it was. Nope, it's gone. I've definitely seen your name pop up. There's not enough of us conflict creators. It sounds like you're starting a fight. Konflikt 47 content creators. So we need to look after each other. Speaking of Konflikt 47 terrain, because I'm working on the Sturmreiser, I had the plan of using all of the misprints as terrain. So because it's such a big project, I didn't want to be fixing stuff constantly along the way. I didn't want to be doing loads and loads of milliput work. I might do a little fix here or there, but I don't want to do major kind of structural work like I've done with other kits in the past. Other 3D prints that have failed. I've kind of rebuilt whole sections of models. And so I just thought, if I get a failed print, I'll just run it again, and I'll take all the failed prints and make terrain out of it. And I don't have any failed prints. My resin printer has run absolutely flawlessly. My FDM printer has been an absolute drama queen about getting anything printed, but as soon as I got it actually running, it's printed everything perfectly. So I've got no misprints. And so what I've had to do is I've had to go back and essentially create some terrain out of those parts. So I've thrown a few bits of the Sturmreiser into a single print, and I've overlaid the leg, the foot, and some of the joints together so that they're like crashed down on the ground and forming a bit of a barricade. which is just a nice bit of terrain to have, like a nice size of line of sight blocking. But the fact that it's in scale Sturmreiser parts, it's pretty thematic as well. Got to get that thing finished. Got to get that thing built. Then I got to get that thing painted. Oh boy. Yeah, the Sturmreiser is a whole thing. Nice way to use everything up. Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of torn between just having. I've only printed one terrain piece from the Sturmreiser, and I'm actually considering almost printing an entire board's worth of stuff of Sturmreiser. Because if I print essentially a second Sturmreiser, but have the parts in a way that each kind of 2 or 3 pieces bundled together is a piece of terrain, then the entire gaming board would look like a Sturmreiser had been there and it had been blown up. Now that's a lot of printing. That is a lot of printing to do that. But also, that's just a whole gaming board. Very easy to use the legs as line of sight blockers. Just blocks, just mid-sized blocks of terrain, and it would be fairly easy to break up the central body into possibly a single larger piece, but also spread it out to make a debris field that could be rough ground rather than line of sight blocking. Alright, that's 2. I like some of the ones that I did standing on sections of wall and bits of rubble. Like the Firefly kit has... Oh, that's the officer. That one. So that... I think that one is just in the Firefly kit of a guy standing on a piece of rubble. But then I've converted some others to be standing on rubble as well. And it's just interesting to have them at that different height. Especially the crouching ones, because they end up being the same height as those ones anyway. In fact, that one's even slightly shorter. So it kind of makes all of the helmets are at the same level, but you can tell that they're still crouched or standing. Ugh, excuse me. Now, that's a bit of an oddity. And I know exactly why that has happened the way it's happened. So if you see, this is the knee pad. And then this is the strap for the knee pad, and obviously because his legs at this angle, the knee, kind of that strap would go into the back of his knee, which is basically here, where the knee joint is, and that makes total sense. But this here, this kind of slightly square shape here, that's his thigh pocket. And so what has happened is, as he's kneeling down, the thigh is at this angle, and so his thigh pocket is obviously pointing this way, and then the knee is here, and the knee and the strap for that is pointing into the back of the knee. But they've overlaid in such a way that the strap for the knee pad is going into the base of the pocket, the thigh pocket. Because if you were to kneel down like this, wearing this type of clothing, that pocket would crunch up. It would be folded up on itself up here. It wouldn't be nice and neatly down here. Andre, hi, how you doing? Yeah, just an oddity for me to complain at, don't worry. That is because that is a digital sculpt, and they've sculpted it once, and then they've used that original sculpt with posing to make all of the different poses. It makes sense to do it that way, but you do have to check on little things like that. Most people wouldn't notice something like that, but I have worn knee pads and like knee pads and tactical trousers and holsters and all sorts of other things whilst running about. So yeah, I know how these things tend to go, and it's something that you actually do need to understand at some points, is that you do sometimes need to kneel down, and if you're wearing equipment that will actually bind up and not let you kneel down, that's a problem. Trying to work out where there's a strap that goes over the thigh pocket here, but it's just kind of hard to recognize where it is. I think it's that. Well, it is now. Andre says, and well, had to look at the video, thanks for that. Yeah, so there's some secret stuff happening behind the scenes. And I will at some point be doing a video on the tabletop simulator, specifically using tabletop simulator to play Bolt Action and Konflikt 47, and the various difficulties and oddities and utility that you get out of that particular software. And hopefully at some point I will get the there's like a branded Bolt Action computer game coming soon, probably next year, and I expect that will be much more restrictive, but a lot less janky, right? So the thing about Tabletop Simulator is you can play any tabletop game on it. Oliver, hi, how you doing? Tabletop Sim, yeah, absolutely. Where was I? Yeah, so Tabletop Sim isn't for one specific game, it's for many games, it's for any game, and so it necessarily has to be very flexible, and that flexibility comes at the cost of specificity in a way. So you can do sort of anything, but nothing really works that well. Whereas if you had something like the Bolt Action branded game, I hope it would be a much tighter, much more coherent game, but you can only ever play one game. You can only ever play bolt action with it. It would be nice if they did a Conflict 47 expansion for it, which might happen. I have no idea. Yeah, I've played all sorts of wacky stuff in Tabletop Simulator. I think that's right. Keeping track of all the straps on these guys is difficult when they're all crunched up like that. And especially when this paint is barely paint anymore. I think this is one of my converted ones, on account of there's a line of glue right by his foot. Oliver says, used to play one-page rules when the 3.5 beta was coming out. Love to play some Space War games on it. Especially Billion Suns and Void Admiral. I've not heard of Billion Suns. I have heard of Void Admiral. I've also heard of Dropfleet Commander. Andre says that Necromunda board is crazy, by the way. Yes. No one else has seen that. Well, Ratman has seen that because I was playing against him. But here's the thing with Tabletop Simulator, is because it's digital, you don't have to pack away when you're done. And so what I did is I created a board that we could play a game of Necromunda on. Because Ratman and myself were playing a little Necromunda campaign a while back. And kind of we played a few games, and then I from different angles, and then I added basically just a second board to the first board, and just put on some terrain there so that we can play a few games there, and then you can play kind of in the middle and get a few more. And then I added more boards and more buildings and more roads and more rubble and ruin and fire and everything else, and it expanded and it expanded and it expanded, and essentially I've got this whole chunk of a city as a single like you could call it a single board, but whenever you played a game you just cut a chunk out of it and say this is where we're going to play our game. And it's something that you just can't do in real life, because that board would have been the size of my house. Maybe not quite, but certainly bigger than you'd ever be able to reach past. So if it was a physical board like that, you wouldn't be able to reach from the edge into the middle to be able to move models around. You just wouldn't. Oliver says, Billion Suns is an Osprey Blue Book. Quite a good game, very unique. Plays across multiple smaller tables with ships jumping in between. That's an interesting concept. Second edition of it is due out at the end of this year. Okay. The only thing I can think of that relates to that is actually Battlefleet Gothic and the orbit rules. So if you had a game board set up, you would only ever really have one planet, or maybe a binary planet. You'd have two planets because of the scale of the game. But if you flew one of your spaceships up to a planet, you could enter orbit, and so you'd have a second table, just a smaller table off the side, and then that would be where the orbit any ship that was in orbit would be on that table. I'm not sure if that's kind of what you mean by that. Andre says, to play that board, you'd need one of those Hollywood Museum heist rigs. Yeah, just Mission Impossible it. Yeah, every time you want to make a move, you just have to... Or just a really, really long grabby stick. Yeah, there's the grabby stick, and you reach in, grab the model, move it. There's absolutely no way that you could move a sensible... Like, there's no way that you could... Oh yeah, I'm just going to move 6 inches. And yeah, hold a tape measure out at arm's length. Billion Suns is also an interesting game as you don't build your list prior, you build your list as the game goes on. Huh. That's like what's it called? Computer games with civilization building and stuff like that. Real-time strategies, there you go. It's sort of along those lines where you'd start a fight and you'd still be building other units and then you'd send those into a fight. I've always found that a very odd an odd way of doing things. Trying to make sure I get actual pigment in my paint whenever I go for a brush stroke. This paint is very old and nasty. Haven't played Battlefield Gothic in so long. I mean, realistically, I haven't played it properly essentially since it first came out. Because I played it on launch and I played quite a bit of it back then. But it just didn't take off, unfortunately. Certainly not in my local area. And then, as soon as they cut it from the what was Games Workshop calling it? The Specialist Games? Yeah, I think it's Specialist Games. They cut Battlefield Gothic out of the Specialist Games before they closed Specialist Games. And at that point, the local Games Workshop said, "Oh yeah, you're not allowed to play Battlefield Gothic here anymore." Why? There's only a few of us playing it in the first place. Why stop us? It's just mean. I'm definitely going to miss this strap a lot. The kind of underneath the arm, underneath the armpit kind of strap. I guarantee you I've missed that on all the others as well. Yep. Thought so. Just had that feeling that I don't remember having painted this one before. so many. So many straps. So too many straps. All of them. I missed it on all of them. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but there's some brown speckles on that shoulder pad. Nowhere else on the entire model. I assume that has to be the brown paint that I used. Yeah, it does look it. Because I did some of the bases. Yeah, it is the same paint. So at some point, this model's been splattered with the wrong paint. Definitely not in the mood for that song. That's better. Has anyone used fireflies in a game? Because I have not. I think I've only played one game as the Americans since 2nd edition Konflikt came out, or at all in Konflikt actually, because I only ever played Soviets in 1st edition Konflikt, and when I played as the Americans at the start of 2nd, I'd only built the linebacker. So I had linebacker, heavy infantry, jackal, coyote, whichever one it is. Now I have fought against the fireflies. Oliver says most versatile unit in the game. Definitely the fastest. Fighting against them as the Japanese was relatively easy. The danger in that list wasn't the fireflies. The danger was the mechs, because they had 3 mechs and 4 squads of fireflies, and I got really lucky taking out the mechs. Lungemine got 1. That's always good to see. I got Shiboru Cannon on the 2nd one with a double 5 at range. Very lucky. But yeah, the rest of my force just gunned down the fireflies because they're damage value 5. And I've got so much of my stuff focused on Stahltrooper and Ursus and especially Schreckwolfen. Ugh. engage basically anything, minus the heaviest vehicles, grab objectives, give aid out of danger, have good weapon options. Yep. I think that Ghost Warriors and the Nachtalben, Night Terrors, are also kind of in the same rough category. They're very fast, they can move through terrain, they can get around the board, they can potentially kill just about anything depending on how you set them up, like what weapons you're taking with them. Andre says, been looking at some beginner bolt action videos. Does it matter what edition I watch as a noob? Kind of, not really. So there are some fundamental differences between the editions of the game. So if you were to watch one edition and then play a different edition, you could get the wrong idea about something, about certain things. But on the other hand, actually playing the game is going to teach you far better than watching a video. Like, watching a video will kind of give you the vibe, will give you roughly the sequence of how things go, but it's not going to go in, it's not going to teach you the specifics, because even if they tell you the specifics in the video, you're not going to learn it because you're not going to remember it from a video. Whereas actually playing a game, whether it's in person or on tabletop sim, you're actually then doing what you've heard of, and that's going to push it into your brain much more strongly. So actually playing a game is what's going to teach you. Watching a few videos, that's fine. It's going to give you kind of the right vibe, the right understanding of kind of the basics. But you're not actually going to be able to like get into the depth of actually playing a proper game just from that. So once you actually play, so if you were to watch videos on 2nd edition and then you come to play 3rd edition, you'll start off by saying, okay, how does this version of the game actually play, and go and work out what the differences are. And by the time you get to the end of the first game, you'll have picked it up and be fine. I've actually taught quite a few people now how to play either bolt action or conflict, and it takes, realistically, I've done it in person in less than an hour almost every time, because I just set up the table, grab someone, call them over, like, go on, you pick a side, let's play, and an hour later we're finished and they now know how to play the game. Obviously they're not grandmaster after an hour, but they've played the game, they understand the rules, they can go off and read the army lists and work out what they actually would want. Because that's another thing. People come into games like Konflikt and Bolt Action and say, oh, what's the best units to bring? And it's like, there are no best units. It's just, what's the best unit for you and the way that you like to play. And to work out how you like to play, you have to actually play a few games. And once you've played a few games, you can then come back and say, well, I like to have fast-moving armies, so I like to have light tanks and transports. Or I like to have a lot of gun line, so I like big infantry squads and artillery pieces. Or other things as well. That is number 5. We've been here for an hour and I've done 5 models. Turns out that I will not be finishing all of the base coats today. I will barely be finishing one of the base coats today. Oh, that's cool. So this is the sheepskin jacket officer. So this is from the, I think it's from the Konflikt 47 starter set. This model is the specialist one in that, I think. And he actually has, right here in a pouch, I'm pretty sure that is the gas mask. Like, I'm pretty sure that that's the gas mask just rolled up into rolled up into a messy ball and strapped up to his belt. There's also a pistol holster there as well. Oliver says third's the latest edition. That is correct. Third edition bolt action, and Konflikt is in second edition. Andre says just want to watch to familiarise yourself with some concepts. Yeah, terms and concept. That'll actually be absolutely help you out. A lot of the game is the same, and there are just a few minor differences. Well, there's quite a lot of very small differences between editions. And, as I keep ranting on about, there's a lot of small changes between the current version of Bolt Action and the current version of Konflikt. For example, the way that units are allowed to get out of transports is different between the two games. Tough Fighters works differently between the two games. Oliver will have heard me rant about this a lot, so I'll keep it short there. But yeah, watching some stuff to just kind of get yourself in the right frame of mind, the right kind of what to expect and what to aim for is definitely makes sense. So interestingly, the officer has different straps, different harness for the repulsor pack. Some of it's the same, some of it's different. Yeah, I definitely want to get a couple games in as the Americans at some point. And I think that I want to have more of a not a toolbox list, but hammer and anvil list, as opposed to a focus list. I have a squad of heavy infantry. 8 of them, I think. Strictly speaking, I don't have a bazooka team in heavy armor, but I will kit bash something up so that I can use that. So they're a nice heavy fire support unit. And I do have linebacker, who's just off screen. Linebacker and coyote. And then a whole bunch of fireflies. I'm surprised at how fast the how long this paint has lasted, given that it's in dire condition. I just put it on the wet palette and covered it in water, and I'm actually able to get quite a lot of paint out of it. Like, I can feel that there's a lump in the middle, and it's slowly, all of the paint around it's being taken away, just leaving this crusty bit of paint left. But it's been surprisingly effective. I thought I was going to have to switch paint pretty much straight away, and we're over an hour into the stream now. Oliver says down the linebacker. Look, I'm not the guy bringing 3 linebackers in a 1250 point list. I did have 3 linebackers at one point, but that's only because I got the Rift Tech Mega Bundle, and then I immediately sold a bunch of it away. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing about highlights for this, because this paint is definitely not good enough to be highlighting with. I could just highlight it up with the other one, the tan, because that's not necessarily in good condition either, but it's in better condition. Andre says, how long does your paint stay wet on the palette? It depends. How long is a piece of string? Yeah, there's so many variables to that. If you've got the water at the right level, which I currently don't, can you? Yeah, if you see when I'm squishing the sponge there, you can just see the water coming out of it. That's not enough. There should be more water in there than that. So this will dry out faster than it normally would, because I haven't quite got it as full as it should be. Because what it should look like is it should look about like that, where it's actually wet on the top, and whenever you poke it, it just pulls immediately. Whereas that, where you have to actually press down into it to get it to look wet, that's not much. It should all look like this, where it's damp on the top. And then your paper should sit flat on it, so it shouldn't be any wrinkled at all. Because if this is peeling at the corners or it's got wrinkles in it, it's going to dry out faster. And also, how much water is in there in the paint. So I could mix in some water into this paint, and then it's going to stay at that level for a very long time. But because this is dried out and it's in a bit of a lump, it's going to dry out faster. Also, the lid. So when you're not painting with it, if you put the lid back over it, don't make a full seal. Like, leave it with a little bit of a gap, because if you leave it in a full seal, it'll just condense and be awful. But you can fairly easily set up a wet palette, paint one day, put the cover most of the way on, and come back the next day and then carry on with the same paint. Now, I don't paint that way. For multiple reasons, I don't paint that way. but you can, and many people do paint that way, and so that is it's one of the uses of the wet palette. I think that's not the main use. It's not like the important part, but you can keep paint consistent for multiple days. So one of the reasons why I don't paint that way is I actually appreciate the variety you get from bringing paint out multiple times. And every time it's a slightly different consistency. If you're mixing two paints together to make the color you want, then you mix it up in small batches, and every time you'll have a slightly different variation. And once you finish doing a whole squad like that, that natural variation will just make the unit seem more grounded. Whereas if everything is exactly the same color, I should actually change my focus back. Whereas everything is always the same color, it can end up looking like oh yeah, you've all just walked out the factory and everything is absolutely identical. Which, if that's what you want them to look like, is absolutely fine. But I prefer the more varied look, the more variety, the more natural variation. And I remember who was this? I'm trying to think of who it was that actually did this. There was some event going on. It may have been Games Day, like Games Workshop's Games Day, where they wanted to have, or I don't think it was Games Workshop organising it themselves, it was someone organising it for them, and they wanted to have a big army of Space Marines painted, but they couldn't get one person to paint it because it was like a whole company or something. And so they went around and asked everyone, like, oh, can you paint one squad? Can you paint a couple of bikes? Can you paint a vehicle or two? And then everyone would get together at the event, and everyone who turned up would be able to bring it, put down their all their Space Marines, and say, here is one massive Space Marine army that's been painted by multiple people. And one of the things they did was they enforced a paint scheme, like, you have to buy this specific paint of this specific color of red from Games Workshop to paint the Space Marine, the armor, and you have to buy this specific paint for the trim, yellow or the metallic or whatever. I can't remember what the color scheme actually was. And so everyone was using the same paints from the same company, the same year, so it's even the same batches of paint. And then when everyone got together, everything looked different. All of the squads looked subtly different from each other, because it's not just about the paints, it's about the style of painting and the techniques that each painter used. And I think that it looked much cooler having that variety than an army that had been painted all in the same technique and looks the same. Because you look at it and you go, oh yeah, this bike squad, it was red. I'm trying to remember it. It was definitely a red Space Marine army. It's like the bike squad, whoever had done that had used like a solid black wash, and they all looked really grungy and grimy. Whereas one of the others had used maybe a different type of wash or maybe a different colour of wash, and theirs looked much cleaner. And others had different amounts of weathering on them and different techniques. And it's just like, yeah, that's like, after you've been fighting for 10,000 years, like constantly getting replacement soldiers, your fresh-faced new recruits are not going to look like your grizzled veterans. and so it made thematic sense, and it also looked nicer. But they were constantly going on. They were like having this massive row about how, oh, this person obviously used the wrong paint. They bought some cheap off-brand paint and blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's all in the technique. It's all in the techniques used. And you've got different painters who paint in different techniques, different styles, with the same paints, and they can make it look different. On the opposite side of that, my Soviet army is one I always bring up in this kind of discussion. A lot of my Soviet army is painted with coloured primer, and a lot of that primer is visible in most of the models. However, I didn't use one can of primer for the entire army. I have used most of a can of tan, but it was a really light, almost bone white colour. So most of the army is this lighter tan. However, a lot of the army, probably 15-20 models, were painted with a green primer that I had at the time. And still more models were primed in a grey primer. And grey is what I use for nearly everything. And I bought that tan primer specifically for that army because I knew I was going to paint a lot of them. But when I started on a particular squad, I was like, I want these guys to look different. So I'm not going to bother with the tan primer. I'm going to use the grey primer on them. And when I painted them up, I put the grey ones next to the tan ones and the green ones. And I was like, they look the same. They fit together. Because even though I've used different colours, different paints, different different tones, that I've used the same technique on everything. I've painted the boots and the pouches and the hat and the skin all in the same paints and the same techniques, but the main body of the uniform is technically the same with different paints, and so it looks coherent, like they fit with each other even though they're different colors. And several times I've been playing with that army in various shops, and someone's come up and said, oh, they look really good. And I'm like, they are so crudely painted. They are so crudely painted. But yeah, the variety, it's varying, but it's still coherent. I think that's the point. They match each other thematically, even with different paints. So they have variety, but they have coherency as well. Oh, flamethrower guy next. I love how this is very much is it the M2 flamethrower, but just without the backpack and just this little can. And it's like, yeah, sure, it's a Firefly, so they've got a smaller ammunition supply. But on the other hand, it's not how flamethrowers work. Certainly not how flamethrowers from the 1940s work. So this must have some kind of rift tech going on the inside, making it function, which is absolutely legit, but also saying that, the Thompson's not a particularly good weapon for airborne troops, right? In a year where you've got the M1 grease or the M3 grease gun, like, yeah, the Thompson is absolutely iconic. But it's heavy. I don't know what its weight is off the top of my head compared to like an M3 or a Sten or something like that, but it's got to be like half again the weight, right? Those things are heavy. Like, I've handled de-acts and museum pieces of a lot of this stuff, but not all at the same time. So it's hard for me to remember, like, oh, this one's particularly heavy or this one's light or whatever. I remember the Sten being relatively light. Like, it's still a big old chunk of steel, but it's mostly hollow. Whereas the Thompson, there's a lot of metal in that thing, and then a lot of wood on that thing. I mean, we could Elbonia this. Hey chat, what World War II weapon would you actually give to a Firefly? Assuming you could put Tesla on absolutely anything, what makes the most sense? Also 5? Probably not. Has its place, but I don't think the Auto 5 with paper ammunition. Yeah, but Fireflies are probably going to have a better supply chain than like infantry in a foxhole somewhere. So they're going to be able to look after their ammunition better. So even though it's paper ammunition, it's gonna be more reliable. Andre says, I have no knowledge on the subject. Fair enough. It would be a submachine gun, realistically. Because they're mobile, they don't need the range of the rifle. However, there's something to be said for a fast-moving rifle squad that can get into a position and bunker down. So having a rifle squad with a light machine gun, 1919. A Tesla 1919 in a Firefly squad, using the repulsor pack so that they can move that equipment in place and set up. that's interesting. Bazooka teams, flamethrower teams, yeah, all of that makes sense. I mean, we've got I'm holding a flamethrower right now. No, I've done the flamethrower. See, they're almost really ideal for a scouting role. But I think it's mentioned in Fishing Europa that their fuel, the way that they use the fuel, they can't fly for extended periods of time. And so, as important as scouting is, they tend to save their fuel for the actual sharp end of combat. Because I was thinking Fireflies would make, like, any World War II commander would see a Firefly and go, they're my scout corps now. Like, just nip out, tell me where all the Jerrys are, come back and... Especially the Americans, if they can get good information on where, like, enemy forces are deployed and start dropping artillery on them. Although that's the point. How do you make a Firefly radio man? Because the radio packs of this era were huge. Like, even the small ones were essentially a rucksack. Is there a Firefly forward observer? Don't know. We are steadily making some amount of progress here. We're slowly getting through it. Slowly getting through it. Hey, we've got a barman here. With a knife. It's like, imagine having a light machine gun and trying to stab someone with a knife. need to remember how I do the metalwork on my Americans. I made the terrible decision of painting all of the metalwork for each of my bolt action armies in a specific different style from each other. Andre says, once watched Bill making stuff, sort buttons for hours. Watching you paint straps feels similar. I am just painting straps for basically 3 hours today, aren't I? Yeah. Hopefully the talking, the discussion is more interesting than... Has that always been there? Where did you come from? It's a little bit of 3D printing support that's just in my wet palette. That was not there when we started stream. That must have... I must have brushed something against my hand and caught it. Yeah, the problem I have with batch painting like this is it gets incredibly boring, incredibly mentally monotonous. And so if I'm just painting by myself, I will get 5 models, maybe 10 models in, and then just stop and go off and do something else. And if that means going off and painting another model or another color on the same model, that's fine. But there are times when I try and paint big batches that I just stop painting for weeks because I've just got to come back to this kind of monotony. Painting on stream is better because I'm at least talking about something along the way, and that's keeping my brain active and engaged in something that's interesting. However, it's still boring and it's still making me like I very much enjoyed painting the first one. I'm on the 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11th one now. And I have already noticed halfway through the squad that I am getting messier. Like, that's a fold in his trousers there that I've painted in tan. So that when I come to do the green, I'm going to have to repaint that. Now, it's not going to be an issue because I'm going to probably put a highlight on that fold of clothing anyway, which is going to be that green. Yeah, nothing at this step actually matters when it comes to neatness. Really. Like, there's limits to that, obviously, but I can be much messier than I am being right now, and it wouldn't make a difference to the final piece, so long as in future steps, I am then neater. So what I did do with... Who was this with? I have no idea. It may have been Orcs. But I painted a bunch of base coats on like 45 or 50 models. And then when I came to do the highlighting, I just did 5 models at a time. Like, highlighted 5 models, put them aside and they were done, and then got the next 5 out, highlighted them and they were done. And that was... That process was much more my style. Oh, hey, I know this guy. So this guy's in a different pose from any of the other Fireflies because this is the torso from the Shibito. Not from the Shibito, from the Totem Core, which is Shibito just with the word Totem Core written on the box. I'm going to make that joke every time I mention that box of Totem Core. But yeah, looking at this particular torso, I went over it and it's like, there's a couple of bits where it's like torn clothing and stuff, but nothing major. Most of the like physical damage to the totem core was on the arms and on the head. So what I did is I just glued some normal Firefly arms and head to him. Job done. Absolutely fits the bill. And you can kind of quite obviously tell that he is made from the same base sculpt as the other Fireflies were, because he has all of the same 3D sculpting artifacts, shall we say. I'm going to have to work out how I'm doing the bases. Because I've got the cobblestones on a lot of the bases. Cobblestones, but I've also got rubble on a lot of the bases as well. And that's because I wanted a two-tone... just two different solid colours on the base, because that makes it look a lot more visually interesting than just everything on the base being one colour, even though realism would suggest that the 75 centimetre circle at the foot of every soldier most of the time is going to be the same colour. If you're on a cobblestone road, that 75 centimetre circle is going to be all cobblestone. If you're on the grass, it's going to be all grass. If you're in the desert, it's going to all be sand. But it just looks better if you have... it doesn't have to be 50-50. In fact, it's better if it's not 50-50. So if you have a look at this one, that's about... probably 70%, 30%. So 30% is the cobblestones, 70% is the brown rubble. Whereas that one's more like probably 80-20. And the other way around, because that's got more cobblestone. Ones like this are interesting with the large section of wall, because I've just done an inside and an outside. But again, to have the variety, here's a model in the squad that's not going to have any rubble, it's just going to be cobblestone. The rule of variety and the rule of randomness is not to have no rules. Don't set yourself it has to be this color, it has to be this percent to make it look random, because then you're just making a pattern, and patterns aren't random. But if you don't set yourself a rule, then you will just subconsciously fall into a pattern, because that's what humans are very good at. And so what you need to do is start off without a plan, without a pattern, and then try to work out what the pattern that you're making subconsciously is, and then break that pattern. And that will give you a much more random looking result than if you'd actually tried to be random from the beginning. And I learned that on my Tanith, actually. the camouflage pattern on the Tanith First and Only, their cloaks. I wanted essentially I called it a fleckle pattern. It's just a lot of dots of various colours. And I wanted it to look relatively random. That's not. He's fallen off. I wanted it to look relatively random. And I found that the best way was just to start, lean into a pattern that I was like, start without a pattern and realize what pattern I was subconsciously making, and then once I realized what the pattern was, I would deliberately break it. One example was that I was tending to stay away from edges, so I was doing little patches of one color, and I would put a patch here and a patch here and a patch there, and then when I get to the edge of the part, I would make sure that my little splotch was just off from the edge. And now I was doing that subconsciously. And once I realized I was doing that, I started to put patches like halfway around the edge, so that it was just a little bit of each color visible, and that kind of broke that pattern and made it look much better. How is it? I think I want to change this. It looks better in a different angle. Do I have a knife nearby? How do I not have a knife? I'll tell you exactly why I've got a knife. It's because I'm building a model downstairs and I'm painting upstairs, so I don't need my tools upstairs. I need my tools downstairs. That model is actually going surprisingly well. For those who have been keeping track of that, it's well underway. Do like me some proper polystyrene cement. It's becoming harder to get because everyone seems to love all this super thin polystyrene cement. Why? Right, so I'm stuck here for a minute while I fit this part that doesn't quite fit very well together. I'm gonna have to come up with a way of supporting this because I can't hold it the entire time. There's only a very small contact surface here, which is not great. Musical interlude, though. There we go. So now, if I put him over here and lock him between two paint pots so that he can't fall over. Well, that's not awkward in the slightest. Let's ignore him and carry on with something else. Andre says, still have to catch up on your longer videos. The Sturmriser looks cool. Oh man, the Sturmriser. Yeah. I've nearly finished building. I've been at it for two solid days. And the real reason why it's taking so long is that I'm building it with epoxy resin. And I'm using the 5-minute stuff. But just because it says 5-minute epoxy doesn't mean it sets in 5 minutes. It means it has a working time of 5 minutes. And one of the tubes I've got is very old. Probably from back in my Nerf days. And when that type of resin gets old, it still cures, but it just takes longer for it to cure. So I'm having to set up joins, mix the epoxy, put it in place, and then leave it there for half an hour or an hour. And I'm very tempted to just go, I'll super glue this bit. This bit doesn't need to be strong. I can just use super glue. But no, I'm sticking with it. I'm using epoxy for all of the structural stuff. When it comes to the little detail things, that can be super glued in because they're not that heavy. That's fine. They're not gonna break off just because they've got super glue. But the big structural stuff, that really, really needs proper adhesive. I realise I've been pushed over the table because of this model. There you go. Down here, he's propped up in between two paint pots, wedged into place. Probably set by now, actually. So I've noticed that some of these fireflies have, right here, see that dark line right there? There's a cable that runs up to their collar and under their shoulder. And I have no idea what that might be. Is it a radio microphone? Kind of communication within the squad. Makes sense for a unit like this. Fast moving and they don't want to get separated. It almost looks like a camelback straw. If anyone's used like the old hydration rucksacks. There we go. That should be fine now. Oh. There's another one with brown paint all over his helmet there. Much bigger bit than the others. The others were just little speckles, whereas that's a big splotch. No idea. I assume it must have been that I had them on the airbrushing table and I painted the green on these, and then I went off to do some brown on something else, and just these were just in the background and caught the odd little splash. Which is not going to affect them in the slightest in terms of painting. By the time we're done, that'll just look like a little dark spot. And again, a little bit of natural variety like that. Can help a paint scheme. Actually make it seem more grounded to have uneven things, because reality, famously, very uneven. Am I out of focus again? We're getting there. We're getting there. I think by the end of the stream we will have finished the one colour, but we're getting there. Oh boy. Starting to think of what type of wash I want on these guys, because it's probably going to be a much softer wash, because I want these guys to not be, I want them to be kind of in that gritty reality is brown kind of theme, but I also want them to appear much more saturated, much brighter than the just foot infantry that are nearby. So if I go with a softer wash and then give them a much more just a harsher like highlight, green highlight in the uniform. What was my rant earlier about using the same paints and getting different effects? Well, I'm doing that deliberately right now, or at least I'm thinking about how I'm going to achieve that on purpose. Andre says, glad I strapped in for the stream. Yeah. Need to have a moment every now and again just to get my eyes to think straight again. So if I remember right, I've got 3 squads of 6 with 2 flamethrowers and 2 BARs, and then I've got 3 officers, 1 of the converted totem corps, and then 2 of Roberta Wells. So if I put my officer on foot rather than a Firefly officer, that's 4 squads of Fireflies that I could have. 4 squads of 6. Realistically, it would be 3 squads and the Firefly officer, and I'd bulk up one of the squads to be a slightly larger size. But I will have to actually play a few games with them to work out what they're good at, what they're best for. Yeah, there's that pipe again. Across there, it just kind of goes... It kind of goes to the collar and then up and around the collar and kind of disappears. And it's got a lump in it right there, so I suspect it is supposed to be a radio. I hope you'll all join me next week when I paint all of the boots of all of these models. Oh, I laugh, but it probably will be that. So this guy has some kind of tank on the side of his helmet that then has a pipe into his gas mask. Are we sure these guys aren't like on combat stims? Gotta like that one. Look at that pose. That's a pose. Oh, this guy's got the same head with the... Yeah, I think I'm getting to the point where there's only that lump of paint left in the paint, which is not gonna... It's not gonna just dissolve now, so I'm gonna have to add some actual paint to the paint palette. Or, what I should do, throw this paint away and use a different paint, because it's gone, it's dead. Yeah, that's too much paint on the brush. It's just kind of getting a bit messy. Yeah, that's better. Just another thing I'm going to have to clean up when I get to it, when I get to doing the highlights. Like I said, it starts off fine and then it just gets messier and messier as we go along. Just because I'm painting the same details. There are essentially 6 torsos, right, in the plastic kit. There's 9 sets of legs, but there's only 6 torsos. And so there's only 6 varieties of strapping around the torsos. Plus the officers. I've done one of the officers, so there was that one was a bit different. But given that they're all based on the same sculpt, even the different ones are not so different. I think the focus is drifting again. I'm never sure if it's actually changed setting or if the setting has stayed the same but the focus is like physically drifting. I should watch back my stream at 1000% speed and see if I can notice the yeah, if I can notice it drifting. The light is fluctuating a bit. Yeah, I've got all of the settings of this camera basically locked, and yet whenever it gets brighter or darker, it still adjusts the brightness. Like, if I put something dark on screen, if I just fill it with dark things, like that, and then I do this, the brightness is locked. The brightness of this camera is locked. It should not be doing that, and yet it is. It annoys me, because I've gone through every setting I can find for this thing to try and have it permanently fixed into, like, whatever setting it is. Let me lock it into a place so that I can then adjust the environment. I can adjust these lights. I can adjust the position of the camera to get it to look right. All you need to do is just not auto brightness when the auto brightness is set to off. Grr. See, this is why I was using my old phone for filming so much. It's because I was able to lock everything up, including the brightness. The brightness would actually stay at whatever setting it was at. And there was a point where I was literally, I had like this, I would hold it up until I got the brightness exactly where I wanted it, and then I'd lock it, and then I could carry on with it fixed in place. It was such a janky way of doing it, and it's annoying that I have to go to these lengths. But yeah, there it is. Speaking of models being all the same, this is one of the officers, and so now we have a boot knife. Yeah, variety. Woo. Something that's actually different. Yay. Oh no, you didn't. Oh no, okay, it's okay. It's okay. So right here, that strap goes underneath this pouch, and I thought that that was the pocket of his trousers. Like, how? How does that strap go through his trousers? But no, it's just a, I think that's the medical pouch. Yeah, we got a shotgun going on here. I think one of the other officers has a shotgun as well. It's like, just give me the rules. Give me the rules for the shotgun. It would actually be nice to drop the points of the officer down by 4 or 5 to take off the Thompson and give them the shotgun instead. Oh yeah, and folded wings as well. I think Roberta has folded wings. Yeah, she does. So she's got folded wings on her pack as well. Is it the same? I mean, it's indistinguishable. I don't know if it's the same. Yeah. Oh man, I really am getting messy now. So that is the reloading special model. This came with a little diorama with a Stormtrooper who's also reloading, standing on the other side of the wall. And he's got a shotgun here. So to me that looks like what's it called? The trench gun, the Winchester 1887, I think. But it's been clubfoot and sawn barrel as well, so it's lost the bayonet mount, so no bayonets on your shotgun anymore. Yeah, and we've just got a bit of a canvas wrap around the grip, probably because of how it was sawn off. Do we have the other officer? Here we go. For the sake of the variety, here is the other officer. So this would have been the one from the American Starter Army. And that's more brown that's splattered on this guy as well. Huh. Right, this guy's got his mask on his belt as well. So that means at least two of the characters with bare faces still have their gas masks to hand, even if they're not wearing them. Oh, that's actually his shotgun strap up here. Kind of going under his shoulder pad, which, let me tell you, it's not a good idea to get your slings and straps and shoulder pads and other things tangled in together. I've definitely had the situation with a holster and a knee pad getting caught up. Not great. I actually had a specific setup with, I was wearing a camelback and it was interfering with the sling on one of my shotguns so badly that I changed the sling on my shotgun to a completely different style just so that it would stop interfering. I don't think that one's on the wall, actually. Also, I can't really bring it down because YouTube rules. Hey, Yuli, what's up? How you doing? Thank you for helping us through the Corpo slog with your videos. Is one of the other games having fun with you again? Because, yeah, I assume I know what you mean by that. There just comes a point where even if you like something, you have to realize that it is more trouble than it's worth, and you have to move on. That is too thick. There we go. Yeah, so I've got a bunch of fireflies here. All of them. I should not have done that. And I've basically spent the entire stream painting the straps and the webbing and the harness in this very decayed old ochre paint that is barely lasting. I'm surprised I've managed to make it work for as long as I have. I guess I'm just stubborn. What time are we at? Oh, we've gone 8 o'clock now. That's cool. You know what? I am kind of glad that the long stream is the painting of the most boring thing for 3 hours rather than something that's actually interesting. Because it means that when people see the length of the stream and they don't watch it, they've lost less. Like, they haven't lost the really good stuff. They've lost me painting straps for 3 hours. Not that we haven't talked about interesting things along the way. Oh, I think that's... There's a line on this that I've caught some paint in. I'm trying to work out what it is. I think that's where the leg was molded as a separate piece and I've glued it together. And it's just got a little bit of a gap there, but yeah. it kind of looks more like a fold in the clothes than anything disastrous. No need for gap filling. We've got the other flamethrower going out. So we've had both of the BARs, we've had both the flamethrowers. Have we had 2 or 3 of the officers? I think we've had all 3 of the officers. So now it's just... Yeah, we've got 1 more normal, and then the 2 of Roberta Wells. I don't know how Roberta Wells ended up last. Both of the Robertas have ended up last. Do need to decide how I'm going to paint Roberta, because I want to do a lot of it the same as the Fireflies, but I do want to make her distinct as well because she's a character. I know in the official artwork her shirt is white, kind of the scientist white shirt kind of thing. I don't have my Festung Europa book out anymore. I've put that away. Or else I would check. Like I said, every single one is just getting messier and messier. I am just not enjoying batch painting like this. Never have. Right, last of the normal Fireflies, and then we'll do Dr. Wells. Nearly there. Nearly there. Keep focus. Don't let your eyes go cross-eyed. Just a couple more. Yuli says, assembled as gifted Ziz 3 this weekend, and the amount of fixing it took makes me feel like I fixed the real life version. Dark Souls box of miniature kits. I keep hearing people complaining about, I assume you're talking about the Metal Warlord Games one. I keep hearing people complain about the metal artillery guns. So much so that I went and got one myself, and I assembled it, and I was like, this is fine. It was fine. Like, some of the parts were a little bent, so I bent them back, and some of the parts, like one of the parts didn't quite fit together, and so I just bent it till it fit together. It was fine. Now, if you want the Dark Souls of miniature kits, get yourself a 1960s Airfix kit. Even those aren't that bad. I've done garage kits, so yeah. I've made a kit that was built, that like the actual molding was done by solvent washing the mold. Which is a process that nobody uses because it's awful. And for anyone who doesn't know what solvent washing is, you make a mold of the thing you want to make, and usually you'd put some material into it, and then it would become a solid, and then you take it out and you've got your part. Not so in solvent washing. In solvent washing, you melt down your material in a solvent, like say melting plastic in acetone, and you wash the mold. You kind of pour it on and let it pour off, and let that set. Let it dry. Let the aggregate, the plastic, set in the mold just as a skin, and then you wash it again, and you wash it 2 or 3 times like this. Build up those layers, and eventually you get to the point where you say, "Yeah, that'll do," and then ship it. I've had kits like that. Those are difficult to build. When you have to get some plumber's 2-part epoxy putty and press that onto the inside of the part just so it doesn't shatter, that's how you know you're having a good time. Actually, what's her name? Sugden, Louise Sugden. She just did a video last week of one of the first Gundam kits, and oh boy, you can tell that tooling. You can tell that tooling is old, and even like the type of plastic that it's made of is different from modern polystyrene. It's like it's a different different mix of additives, and it's just so much more difficult to work with that stuff. I've never done a proper like lead model. Like the old way of doing lead models is you'd buy a mold like this, like a block that big in 2 parts, and you'd heat up some lead over a campfire or a camping stove and pour it in, take it out, and then you'd repeat that, and you'd make like 50 of your Napoleonic era soldiers, because it was usually Napoleonics for that era of wargaming. I'm gonna have to see if I can find a mold like that, because that's something that's like a historical part of our hobby that we don't really do anymore. So everything on this model is very different. I thought the same thing you did, and thought people just hate metal kits. I've worked with hundreds of metal and resin kits, so used to it, but I swear every part on this kit was warped. Warped, not bent. I will admit, I have not specifically built the Ziz 3, because I built the 10.5 centimeter German howitzer, which people said was a bad one, and it was fine. So once you look at the picture and work out which way the parts go in, it's not really a big deal. But there are some differences between like the Ziz 3 and the German howitzer and the other ones. But we've got plastic ones coming now. The Pack 30, Pack 38, Pack 40 for the Germans. The Soviets are coming next, and it is the Ziz 3 for them. So that'll be a plastic sprue of that. I'm wondering if everyone's just going to get one gun each, or if they're going to get a howitzer and an anti-tank gun each. I'm wondering if the British are going to get the 17 pounder, the Pheasant, because that's the iconic one. But then there's also the 2 pounder and the 6 pounder that were also widely used and are far more suited to a game of bolt action. Warps as in the details are missing or distorted. I can fix bent. I made missing parts out of plastic and milliput. Okay, that does seem like you've had a time with that one. What did I say? I've just been reminded of something I said in my last video. It was when I was, in fact, I have it right here, the Humber armored car. I was talking about the instructions and how how every single kit from Warlord Games has some number that's wrong, at least one, if not several. And I said maybe it's just them trying to weed out like the weak modelers. Only good modelers can build this stuff. But this is why I constantly do videos on these hard to build models, is because I want to show, okay, this is specifically the reason why the people are finding it hard, and here's how you fix it. I almost feel like I should leave that as a green, because this is armor. This version of Roberta Wells actually does have armor, whereas does the Firefly version of Wells also have armor? Oh, sorry, this is the armored. Sorry, this is the Firefly version of Wells, because the other one doesn't. I don't know. Warlord loves Germany, so I feel like their kits are not the problem child. But either way, I'm excited for plastic. The German kit looks amazing. You said they were doing Soviets next. Yes. So from what I understand from the announcements, every nation is going to get one sprue of some artillery piece and one sprue of some heavy weapons, and then some of the factions will also get one sprue of the crew to go with them. It's relatively easy to just buy the either of the 2 sprues that you will get, and then just a sprue of infantry and kit bash up some crew. That's not going to be a big deal, because not everyone's getting that. Sorry, not everyone's getting their own dedicated crew sprue. And they have announced that just after they announced the German, which was Pack 38. So I can't remember, it's Pack 38 or Pack 40. It's the medium anti-tank gun. The weapon sprue had Panzerschreck, medium mortar, and I think like stuff for an observer or a radio operator. So yeah, observer or an officer's model. And then it also had the not theodolite. What's the binoculars where it's separated out? It's a range finding thing, and you find the range by looking through the 2 and adjusting it until the 2 overlay. That's on the second sprue, and then the third sprue has crew. They've already announced the Soviets are coming next, and it will be the ZIS-3. The weapon sprue will have a medium mortar on it and some other stuff which we haven't seen, and we will be getting a crew sprue for that as well. But those will actually be the Soviet naval forces, specifically the crew models will be. You can still obviously swap them out for regular Soviet infantry. The new ones or the old ones, you can kind of interchange between them fairly easily. But if you get the crew sprue that's coming for that release, it will be the Naval Landing. Sorry, Naval Landing Brigade is Japanese. Whatever the Soviet Naval Infantry was called, because there were loads of sailors that were supposed to be on the ships, and then the Soviets were like, "Well, our ships aren't doing anything, and we don't have many of them in the first place, and they're in the wrong place. So let's just take all of the sailors that we had, turn them into infantry, and send them west across the land." And that was surprisingly effective. I have something stuck. Oh, there you go. Just a lump of paint in the Pack 40. Yeah. I am not an expert when it comes to artillery. Like, I only really know things like the ZIS-3, the Pheasant, like the 6-pounder. I only know those because I've either seen them in museums or I've built a model of one. And even then, if you showed me a similar gun, I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference. This Roberta is so much smaller than the other one. It's something I noticed, I can't remember when I did the comparison, but if you just put them side by side, and if I get a Firefly as well, I need one standing, so that one you'll do. Like, if I put them base height, that middle Roberta Wells and this guy are very comparable in terms of how like heavily set they are, whereas this one, she's much more true scale, much more slender. The difference is much more kind of noticeable in person than it is on camera, but hopefully you can see the difference there. This one is hero scale and this one is, I mean, still hero scale, but not as hero scale. I should... do I have... I have one bolt action model handily nearby, although it does have some 3D printed parts and it's also kneeling, so it's not necessarily the best comparison. Yeah, it's kind of in the middle, actually. didn't prime that one, so won't be painting it today. Is that all I can do on this? Yeah, I think it is. And I really want to change those knee pads back. Oh look, another pot of paint that is absolutely dead. I should stop complaining about this and just buy myself some new paints. Yeah, I think that's the right way. There's a lump, probably a sprue injection point on that armor panel, so I want to get rid of that. It's kind of odd with the CO cast that you get these almost like hairs, but not really. Like just tiny little spikes of the resin sticking into, like sticking out of the model. And I wonder where they're for. Is it an air release? Is it part of the manufacture of the molds? What I might have to do, I might have to go to Warlord Games and ask them. And it's not like I have a direct line to John Stallard or anything. I'll just go to the Warlord Open Day, and when they go on the tour and have a look at the COcast machines and say, "Oh, I've noticed that there are these little hairs occasionally, and they're really easy to clean up. I just wondered where the hell they're from." That, yeah. Green knee pads looks better, given that she's got other green armor on her. Yuli says, do you feel like there's a scale creep in bolt action versus Konflikt? The Fireflies are definitely 32s. Recently got the Soviet infantry and they seem 28s. So 1 to 56 is different from... Oh yeah, 1 to 56 heroic. Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Yes, but that's the point. The... kind of the stuff in Konflikt 47 is supposed to be big and impressive and strong. They're all like genetically modified and powered armored suits and stuff like that. They should be that little bit bigger. I think there's while they are physically larger, there's also an update in the method of manufacture that's making it seem even more of a difference than it actually is. And that's that I can't really put my finger on it. I haven't necessarily like nailed it down, but the Konflikt models are being sculpted in a very specific style, whereas the bolt action infantry are a much softer kind of style, which makes painting Konflikt in my style, the way that I paint. I'm noticing that Konflikt models are really easy to paint. It's not that bolt action are difficult to paint. Bolt action is actually relatively easy to paint, but just Konflikt models are so easy to pick out the details of. And I think that there is a technical style that's gone into the models for the purpose of making them appear more distinct in photographs. So all of the details and stuff have sharper corners and better separation. And like the gaps between one bit of clothing and the next, there'll be like a seam there so that a wash will land in there and actually make a dark line, so you have that separation. And I think that is quite deliberate. And so you have both that style being implemented and also a slight increase in size, and they both make the models appear so much more distinct than the bolt action models. I personally don't care. I've been wargaming for 30 years. I've got models in all sorts of different scales. I've got 28mm models that are 25mm tall. I've got 22mm tall. I've got models that are 40mm tall. Like, it gets to a point where I just can't care anymore. I'm quite happy. Like, when I did a video, God, it must be 2 or 3 years ago now, on the Perry Miniatures 8th Army models and comparing them to Warlord Games 8th Army models. And those two, even though they're both 28mm, they're both exactly the same unit from exactly the same time period, they are extremely different in art style. And the Warlord Games ones are quite hero scale. They're one of the most hero scale of the bolt action offerings, whereas Perry Miniatures are very much true scale. They're not even slightly hero scale. In fact, there's almost points that are thinner than real to make them to balance things out. And you put them next to each other, and some wargamers are like, this is unacceptable. I can't have them standing next to each other. I can't have them in the same army. I can't even have my opponent having Warlord Games models and me having an entire army of Perry models, because they just look wrong. Whereas I'm like, nah, I'm just going to put them together in the same squad and be fine. That guy's skinny, that guy's hench as fuck. I don't mind. You should see my spaceship collection. They're all over the place. It's way worse than my infantry collection. So this Roberta... Oh, where did I put the other one? There she is. Her knee pads are the same design. Different from the Fireflies, but the same as the other version of the Roberta Wells. But she doesn't have Firefly pack. She has a whatever rucksack. Rift Energy Science thing. I am going to need to... Yeah, I think I will go with a white uniform shirt, like a lab coat kind of thing for her. Right, that paint's done. Let's get some more. That's green. Oh yeah, this is the paint I've been dealing with today. I'm stubbornly using it and I've no idea why. I should just get myself some. I don't have another paint that's similar to this. I've got a tan and an ochre and they're both in the same condition. But just this one left. Just one to go. So that's interesting. So her knee pads are the same design as the other Roberta Wells, which includes the straps. So the straps on the side of the knee pad, you see that little V shape there, that's the same on this one. But that is different from all of the Fireflies, who all have the same design as themselves, but a different design from this. And the reason why that's interesting is because all the Fireflies are based off of the same sculpt, the same digital sculpt, which makes sense that they all look the same. Whereas these two are quite clearly different sculpts. So someone has sculpted one of these, and then has gone in and sculpted the other one and used the exact same style of knee pad, even including the straps of the knee pad. And there's like 3 people on the planet who would notice something like that, and the other 2 don't play Konflikt. Uh, the reason why I noticed it so much is because it's a bad design of knee pad. Like, it's an old style of how to attach a knee pad to a leg. It ends up like it will stay up if you stand, but if you do a lot of running, it will slip, and especially if you kneel down, that kind of strap around the back will catch in the back of your knee, and it will just dig into your thigh. I have had similar ones to this. Trying to work out which bit is belt and which bit is tech stuff. There's all sorts of pipes and gubbins and yuck. I keep seeing this very hard defined line on the front of her shirt and thinking she's wearing this massive necklace. But no, that's just the hem? I don't know what the correct term would be, but it's the like the seam down the front, down the edge of each half of the shirt that's just really sculpted heavily. Kind of going back to what I was saying about how Konflikt is sculpted in that way to emphasize shapes. I reckon you could take some Konflikt 47 models and dry brush them. Just black and white dry brush. And then take some bolt action models and do the same, black and white dry brush. And take some photographs of them. And you would get a far more distinct photograph from the Konflikt model than the bolt action model. Just because of the way they're sculpted. And I think it has to be a deliberate change, because they've made, like, the Gurkhas are the most recent bolt action model, and they are made after some of the Konflikt stuff, and yet they still fit the style of the bolt action, not Konflikt. So I think there is a deliberate choice to make them in different styles now, rather than just it's an update that happened at some point and this is how we do things now. Comments welcome on that point. Right, that is the final model. I have done all of the straps. All of the straps in all of the land, all of the webbing, and all of the... Well, okay, technically I haven't done this guy. But he's for the fight. He's the linebacker's pilot, so I'll just leave him. We'll pretend the linebacker doesn't exist. As it's coming up to 9 o'clock, and as I've done all of this work and I have finished that step, I will end the stream soon. So if anyone has any questions, any comments, any suggestions, or any complaints, please post them in the chat box right now, and I will answer them just before the end of the stream. And in the meantime, I'm going to stack everybody up, because I just want to make absolutely sure I know how many fireflies I've actually got. So, where's my flamethrowers? That's a BAR. That's a BAR. I asked for flamethrowers and I found the two BARs. Do I have a flamethrower? There we go, one flamethrower. And there we go. There's the other flamethrower. So that's a BAR and a flamethrower. So if we assume squad size of 6, I can put in just a bunch of regular Tesla Thompsons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 more. That one. And that one. And then it should just be Tesla Thompsons for everyone else, but there are some officers in here. So if I pull out, not you, not you. Yeah, so you're an officer. You are, and you are, and the rest are not. So that also has a Roberta Wells Firefly as well. So I've got 3 officers, Roberta Wells, and then 6, 12, 18, 19 normal Fireflies. $23 in total. 24 if you count the on-foot Wells. Nice. So, in a week's time, because I probably won't get the chance to paint before now and then, I will paint their boots. Essentially, I spent all of this stream painting the webbing and harnesses and straps, and all of next stream I will paint the boots and the base coats of the weapons and things like that. All of the repulsor packs in there. And the coils on the Tesla gun in there. That's probably the next step. Either that or I might paint the linebacker. Because I've got a linebacker here as well. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I will say goodbye. Next week, live stream will be at the usual time of 7 o'clock until 9 on Monday. And I will have a video. I've got a couple of videos in the works, so it's just a case of whichever one I work on during the week and get it actually finished. I think one of the ones that is most likely will actually be a discussion of Konflikt 47 officers and the different options that everyone has for the different nations and the different types of officer. So I did a video a while back for 2nd edition Bolt Action, so now I'm doing Konflikt 47. And the options are different, and the game is different, so how they work is different. So that's probably going to be my video for this week. And I've got a little project that I might work on if I get time, with just like a 3-minute or a 5-minute video during the week. And yeah, I'm also working on the Sturmreiser, so I'll see you. I'll see you for that one as well. Oh, the Sturmreiser it's a whole thing. It's a very big model. It's actually surprisingly easy to build in comparison to other things of that size. It's designed very well, and I appreciate Warlord Games for that. But I will get to that as I get to that. So Yudi says, batch painting is tricky in the process, but you're getting a lot done. Yes, I've. It doesn't necessarily seem like it, but every single line has to be painted separately. So yeah, that does. Take care. Thank you for the stream. Looking forward to the officers discussion. Yes. All right. Yeah, I think that's the one it's about halfway done. So if I just solidly work on that for the rest of the week, I should be able to get it ready. Others are in various different states, so I may decide to switch and do something else, but we shall see. On Saturday there will be a video. It might be that one. And then on Monday there will be a live stream, which will probably be painting these guys, or it might be painting my Nacht Elven. I don't know. Depends how I feel. But for now, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.